Adventures in Open-Hearted Loving. Interesting title. At first, I knew it would be about open-heartedness, and you'll see why from this story how it became Adventures. But I think Adventures is perfect in the title because Adventures contain stories, and I don't know, I consider myself a master storyteller. Those of you who know me better and say, yeah, you tell stories for sure, but they're always long. So I'm checking my watch, so I'll not go over time. And I wanted to say I appreciate the reading that Paulette did and the meditation that really grounded me that I heard from Maurice. And I really like the fact that you brought children into it because I feel like I'm a child who just discovered love. It's going to be a weird description of the adventures. But like I think about it as a story, there's a backstory before I get to the adventures. On February 11th, I was dancing in Live, a club downtown that has what is popularly called the geezer dance. It's mostly old people dancing to music, and there was a woman there that I'd seen before dance with some. But I was struck this particular night. I don't often ask people to dance with me, but I asked her if she'd dance. And we threw down for about 45 minutes, and it was just wonderful. I mean, I rarely find people who can keep up with me dancing. Most women give up after a dance, say, bye. Oh, that's good. I'm good. For 45 minutes, we just held forth. And I thought as we were dancing, I love this woman's energy. I love her dancing. And then I got to a place I said, I love this woman. And the weird thing was, it's like, she's younger than me, she's far more attractive than me. I knew there was nothing in this that could have a future, but I just felt like, love her, I love her. And ironically, I saw her some over the summer, and I saw her just this past Friday. I went to Live, and she was there, and we threw down again for a while. Her name is Corky, and I got her permission to use her name, and some of you might know who Corky is, but most of you won't. It's not that central to my story, except that I discovered something that night. Now, it didn't really take root until June. On June 16th, some of you were here, but most of you weren't, when Christina Morales Hemingway showed us her 3 movies. The middle one of those is called, well, the second one she made is called Naked Angel. And in it, there is this transcendent experience, or at least it was for me, where the angel is talking to the man who has been lonely and depressed and unable to connect to people and tried to show him what love was like. And it was just a beautiful scene. I can't even really describe it, except I knew when I saw it, this is like transcendent. It didn't have people in it. It just had this visual and auditory expression of love, and I just found it so touching. I said one of the things that happened in this experience was Christina would take questions and set up the next film. Only Delith and I and she saw these in succession, and I think she said before the night was over, that was the first time she'd seen her films 3 in a row, and only Delith and I stayed through all of it, but it was a wonderful, heart-opening experience of seeing love from a different perspective. Well, the other thing that happened that night is I was talking to Annie during one of the breaks between the films, and I was sort of selfishly expecting that she was going to compliment me on the wisdom of my sermon from about 2 weeks before when I had talked about Paulette and Al and Rob. And she said, I liked it, but, you just didn't open up about yourself at all. I mean, you didn't talk about your own inner life. And I went, inner life? What's she talking about? That all set the stage for what happened the next morning. Because I was out watching these films the night before, I decided that I was going to stay home and watch Zoom, the church on Zoom. So before I do that, I typically make breakfast. And I was standing in my kitchen when I just started crying. Suddenly I realized, I've spent my whole life pursuing love, trying to be loved. And I said, you got it exactly backwards. You're supposed to be about spreading it, experiencing it. letting it out. Open your heart and let it out. Don't try to be like a magnet drawing it to yourself. I'm still crying when I thought, it's sort of sad that I'm 72 years old and it took me this long to realize this. But then I realized, God will forgive that. Just like that, I knew I was forgiven. I was not seeing things correctly, but I did now. I'm still crying and I'm thinking, all the people, all the time. I want to be loving all the people all the time. And right after that was, are you kidding me? Who could possibly do that? How could you love all the people? There's 7 billion people, and I'm not going to be in contact with more than probably 10,000 of them in my lifetime, if that many. But the key is just keep at it. Just do it. And I knew from that time on I would not relent. In fact, right behind that, I'm still crying and thinking, I have this mantra came to mind. At first it didn't occur to me that it's a mantra, but I thought all the people, all the time. Keep affirming that and keep trying to live that. And again, God will forgive my shortcomings. I won't be that good at it all the time. But when I mentioned before children, I feel like I'm a child trying to do that. I'm new at it. And predictably enough, there have been some successes and some failures, and that's where the adventures come in. Now, as soon as this happened, as I'm standing there crying, I'm thinking, oh my God, there's another sermon here. And when I came in the following Sunday, I tried to express to Annie just how much her words had come to make me look inside and see something of value. And I said, I've got to do a sermon about this. Fortunately, we have 2 ministers, and she talked to Dallas, and Dallas said, way too soon. He just talked. I can't do it this soon. So I said, geez, I'm so disappointed. I want to do this. And if I have to wait, I might forget it. And then it occurred to me, no, you know what? Live it. It's not going to be really useful to people hear about this great insight unless you can show that it's changed who you are and how you function. So then it became, okay, just go out there and do it. And there were a few areas of my life that were pretty immediately affected. Some of you know I'm a counselor in a methadone clinic in Detroit. And currently I have 66 clients, and generally I see them twice a month. And many of them I've known longer than I've known many people here. I've got clients that I've seen for 10 years, 8 years. And I realized, every time we encounter each other, I'm kind of subtly asking them, please disclose to me what's going on in your life. What an odd thing to be asking people to do. And they have to do it because if they want the methadone, they've got to see their counselor. And so they feel like they're compelled to. And suddenly it occurred to me, I can bring love to this consistently. Some of them aren't that easy to love. Some of them are still kind of stuck in their parts of their addiction. But there are definitely some of them that have gotten it and are beautiful people and are growing people, and probably they're the easiest ones to love. But the reality is, bring love to these encounters. And I started doing that as consistently as I was able. And it was amazing to me, the topics we went into. I told at least 4 or 5 of them about that insight. Oh, by the way, that insight happened on the most magical day. It was the 17th of June, which many of you might remember was the merger of Juneteenth, which we now celebrate as a holiday, and Father's Day. So I'll never forget that date. So I told them about the Juneteenth experience, some of them, and I've told some of you parts of this story. But the thing that happened with the clients is I just found it was people who were difficult. Really had a hard time connecting with them. They seemed resistant. They didn't want to talk. Just tolerate their reluctance and just keep loving and letting them feel that. I went to my boss, I think it was shortly after that, and said, I love some of my clients. I just want to tell them. She said, no, it's not professional. You really shouldn't do that. You're an employed counselor. But since that time, I've broken 2 rules. One, I do talk about spiritual matters, and I've been thinking and told for a long time that social workers aren't supposed to get into religious values. But I've learned also from recovery that spirituality, and from this center, spirituality and religion aren't the same thing. So I can talk about spirituality without violating their religious values. And after a short time, I thought, I don't care what the boss says. I love my boss, but she's wrong about this. I need to tell some of these people I love them. So I become free to tell them I love them. And it's been a really remarkable adventure in seeing how things have changed and gotten some fabulous experiences with these clients. That's part of the adventures. The other part is the dancing. Oh my God, the dancing. Shortly after this happened, I saw, or maybe it was around the time in any event, Lucy Neeson, who's been a longtime member here, was at the top of the park. One of the favorite place to dance. I love dancing here, but I got to tell you, just top of the park is unbelievable. I've been doing that for 35 years. Anyway, I was dancing, as I often do, by myself to start the dancing. And Lucy was in the front row. I went over to say hello, and she said, "Do you know, you're just like spreading joy." I went, "Oh, yeah." I mean, I've had a lot of interesting relationships with dancing because I've been doing it for about 50 years. At one time, it was all about attracting women, all about that. They just love seeing a man dance because many men are afraid to do it. And I'm going to attract the right woman if I just keep dancing enough. I think I gave that up about 5 years ago. I'm getting old. I'm kind of fat. I mean, it's not probably going to happen that way. But when Lucy said that, I just realized, oh, yeah. I mean, and Bonnie had said something to me years before that people could sense my spirit. And that's what was guiding this dancing. And I just became so much more conscious of it. It's like, go out and spread the joy and spread the love. And it was a phenomenal summer. I said on the Labor Day weekend gathering, that I danced at that point to 120 bands. It's 140 and counting through this summer. And it's like been amazing. Now, I'm a child still trying to express love. So one of the things that happened that Friday after the Juneteenth, I ran into an old friend from the center, Jackie Kilborn. Some of you know her. And she was there that night with a OT friend who was in town for a conference. She was there for the weekend. She's from Traverse City. And I went over to say hello to Jackie. Well, Jackie's pretty well known in dancing circles, and there was a cluster of men around her, and I just started dancing with the woman she was next to. And I saw something in her dancing and in her eyes, and I said, I'm in love with this woman. And I said, well, just go ahead and tell her. So I told her a little briefly how I'd had this experience so recently, and I just felt like I could love somebody without expectations that there would be a return or a future. I mean, it's clearly not going to be a future with a lady who's from Traverse City. Chances are pretty good I'll never see her again. So I just locked in. I loved her eyes. I loved her dance, and I just loved her for the duration of the evening. As if to make it even more poignant, when the band broke, when I came back, there was this other woman who was dancing kind of frenetically. I mean, I really liked this woman's style. And I got close enough to her. I mean, she was kind of like I am many times, just so into the dancing that like there's nobody around. But I loved this, and I told her, I love you. And I thought, oh my God, I've fallen in love with 2 women in the same night? What? What is this? Well, before the summer was over, there was 13 or 14 more women I fell in love with for the night. It got so frequent that I began to think there's something a little bit off about this. And 2 things I realized. One was with love, there's still this part of me that has expectations. When I would meet a woman for one night and fall in love, it's like, oh, maybe I'll see her again. And I had an experience in early August where I met a woman at Celine on one night, invited her to come to what was, she expressed, her favorite band that was playing the next night in Dexter. And I kept looking for her to arrive, looking for her. It was rainy. It was an ugly day. An old friend who I admitted I loved, that I worked with, named Jan, was there. So we hung out and danced, and I finally gave up the idea that Vicky was coming and went, you know, those expectations just creep in. I've got to be vigilant about that, because that's going to derail this. If I start feeling like unrequited love bullshit again, it'll interfere with this process. Just keep loving, 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 putting it out. By the way, in the mantra, I kept myself thinking, say this to yourself daily. Remind yourself daily. And if you're feeling particularly challenged about loving the particular person you're seeing, I mean, Randall at one point told me when he heard this story, you know, there are some people that are just really hard to love. And he followed that up the next time we talked, but you can always find something to like about them. But I'm determined, I'm going to find love. Find a way to love them. So remind myself, my mission is all the people, all the time. When Michael Dowd was here, he talked about his wife's passion for trees and growth. I was really struck by that. And I said, you know, you need to not limit this to just people. Love, so all of life all the time. I've kind of backed away from that, though, because it's really hard to love all the people all the time. I'll concentrate on people first. Because, you know, nature and things in it are really easy to love. That's not a stretch at all. I don't have to remind myself to love the trees, to love the clouds, to love the birds. People are a different story. And because people can reciprocate, the reality is expectations can creep in looking for reciprocation. So I basically came to the realization toward the end of the summer, it's stop looking to fall in love for the night. Look broader. You're out there dancing, spreading love. Just keep loving everybody. Just dance with this passion, this connection, and let it out. And it's just been marvelous, because since I've gotten there, I think I'm ready for the next step. And that is this. Dancing season outdoors is over for every rational person but me. I'm going to be dancing tonight in Brighton. I'm going to be dancing this coming week in probably 4 different places, including Ann Arbor and Brighton again, and Kellogg Park in Plymouth. I love that place to dance. I'm going to keep dancing, I told myself, to the end of October. Partly, I think I'm putting off the fact that if I don't have dance, how do I find the way to express this love? How do I let it out with such freedom, with such energy? That's the next part of this adventure. How do I find the way to keep expressing the love without expectation to all the people all the time? So, talking about the adventures, I think going back to why it made sense to not do this before now is there's still so much to learn, still so much to overcome. You know, I think another aspect of this, very small one, Dave Bell used to talk a lot about how he would categorize people in traffic as either assholes or idiots. And I could relate. I mean, they're assholes if they're slowing you down. They're idiots if they're coming up behind you and harassing you or making you get out of the way. So it was really challenging to find love for other drivers all the time while I'm driving. That may be the next place I focus on, because I've done some of it, but I'm still not that good at it. One of the adventures in dancing this summer, there was a band that played in the Grove, and they They were a really curious band with a very bizarre sort of combination of instruments. But one thing they did this song in which they coached the crowd in using gestures. This is freedom. I think they said something about this is subtlety or snakes or something. But the one I held on to and the one I keep using is love. I love this expression. If I'm dancing to a song that's got love in it, I just clasp my hands and do this little butterfly thing. Anyway, as I draw toward the conclusion, I want to just, I have some readings I want to do, but I also want to say, I so much appreciate a message I heard from Annie. I think it's been during this time, but she's talked glowingly about laughter. When I feel it's really hard to love, I keep thinking, find a way to laugh at whatever is going on. Because it's such a heart-lifting experience when you laugh, when you smile, and that's the other thing. I taught myself, when I'm dancing, there's a tendency to mouth the words to the song because I know so many songs, but keep smiling. But more than that, laugh. Find a way to laugh at life, and it lifts your spirit, and it makes it easier to love. So I just really love the opportunity to laugh and keep seeking. I think the key going forward is when I try to find new avenues to love, find the touchstone of laughter. That'll make it easier. As I was thinking this was prepared, I encountered some readings. I read these are two of a variety of readings I do on the weekend. And I encountered one on Friday. I want to read a very small part, but ironically, in this book, yesterday's word was adventure. What? Spiritual living prepares me for adventure. Each of my experiences, from low to high, from humble to grand, affords me the opportunity to live from my spiritual nature and use my divine gifts. My life is an adventure in spiritual growth as I call upon these gifts of spirit to meet every need in my life and to realize every dream in my heart. I tap into the power of God and I am strengthened and energized. As I grow in confidence, I discover the power of my divine gifts. With faith and trust, I live fully, embracing my pleasant experiences and facing up to my challenging ones. I'm adventurous, expressing myself with joy and confidence. My assurance grows as I draw forth from my spiritual nature all the qualities that I need to boldly move ahead on my journey. The day before, again, keeping in mind that I do these things at least 3 times a week, and the day before, the topic in this reading was kind of about kindness. I really do believe that it is kindness and love that make the world a brighter, better place. And one more thing, I was looking at this. I've been reading this book since my nephew gave it to me about 4 years ago. It's really kind of a primer for people who have an intimate relationship with one person, but there's so much transcendent truth in this. I was reading something just this morning that really struck me about the ways to experience kindness or express kindness in a relationship. But I just want to highly recommend this book. You won't forget the title of this easily, The Truth About Love. The best part of it is the author of the book is Pat Love. So you'd probably be able to remember that. And if you want to find out about how to bring love, more activate love in those really deep personal relationships you have, you might want to invest in that book. In conclusion, the adventure isn't over. Like I said at the beginning, I'm kind of a child at this, and I've experienced some setbacks. I know there are some limitations ahead of me. I know the biggest one, as I said, is probably find different ways to find the love, express the love now that dancing outdoors is about to come to an end. But all the people, all the time. And truly, if I can do it, you can do it. You just make it your choice on a consistent basis. Thanks for letting me share.